It's an all too familiar story. But I want us to look today at failure and restoration. That's going to be our story today. We're going to look at the story of Peter in a whole entire different light, because you and I are going to walk in his shoes today. You and I are going to look at, what does this story say to me? And I want to say every one of us to hear this powerful, powerful account. Maybe in a different way, and I don't say that because I don't put any light on myself. But we sometimes we don't always grasp something until we walk there. Until we've actually had those shoes on ourselves. And we see something powerful in this story today, in this account. We're going to continue to look, as I said earlier, at this series that we've been in now for a little while. I call Getting Personal with Jesus. And again, if you're visiting today, we're so excited to have you here. We're honored with your presence, and we just pray that what we do and what we offer is a blessing to you, and that you would do us the honor of returning again. And any questions that you have about what we do, you can certainly see me after the service, or different ones that I can point you to that can help you. But I want us to get a picture today as we're looking through the understanding of walking and getting personal with Jesus. I want us to get a picture and understand not just the nature and not just the character of Jesus, but what I want us to see is the heart of the Father. You see, Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. What was he speaking of? Was he speaking of his physical makeup? No. He was speaking of his character, of his nature. We see the desire that Jesus has for life. We see love at levels that we can't measure. We can't even process that. We see correction when it's necessary through the person of Christ. We see healing and comfort and guidance and wisdom. We see that our life matters. As you've heard me say through this teaching series, a lot of people struggle with that because of the difficulties that they're wrestling with, whatever it may be in life. But I want us to hear the story of Peter today in a very personal way. I want to set that stage for you, if I can, for just a moment. Jesus told Peter. Now, Peter was a strong person, a vibrant person, a very confirmed in what he believed, right? We'll leave it there. He was very astute in what he thought and what he felt. And he felt without a question that he was strong, that he was clear about his faith. He knew where he stood. But Jesus told him, before this day is over, before the rooster crows, you will have denied me 3 times. Now, Peter didn't believe that. Peter absolutely didn't believe that. We can look at John 18 for our text, not for the message today, but for the stage here that we're trying to set, the picture we're painting. John 18 and 17 says, then the servant girl who was the doorkeeper said to Peter, you aren't one of that man's disciples too, are you? He said, I am not. Denial 1. Then in John 18 and 25, now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself by the fire. And they said to him, you aren't one of his disciples, are you? He denied it and said, I am not. Denial number 2. We look down in verse 26 of John 18. And it says, one of the high priest's servants and a relative of a man whose ear Peter had cut off said, did you see him in the garden? And Peter denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed. Now I want you to think about that for a minute. That's number 3. Peter's heart at that very moment sunk because reality set in. Reality set in at that very moment. At the sound of that rooster, the brokenness and the sick feeling in his gut said, I just failed God. I just failed God. I have let him down. I have failed. Oh my word, have I blown it? I have failed at levels that I didn't even know I could do. I am a failure. I am finished. I can never be of service again. I am no good. I am of no use. My life is pretty much over. That was where Peter was at that very moment. That's the place that he was wrestling with, is I've gone too far. Anybody ever felt that way? We've all traveled down some roads that we wish we hadn't. We all wish there's things that we could go back and take back or fix or whatever. The word failure, if we define that word, it simply means the lack of success. That's all that word means. But I want us to hear this. In other words, what it means is what I attempted to do, I didn't do. What I attempted to do, I didn't do. If we base that, if we simply base that definition and base our life on that principle, we have all failed at something. Every one of us. We failed a test, we failed a challenge, we failed another person because we didn't live up to their expectation, and we failed God. That's not to be critical. That's not to be mean. We all have. Because Romans says that we've all fallen short of the glory of God, right? So we've all done it. And we've all beat ourselves up about it. I want us to hear this story today. See, Peter was adamant in his life that he was strong. I would never do that. I'll always be with you. I will never mess up. I'll stand strong. I'll do this. He couldn't imagine. It couldn't cross his mind that I could deny God, that I could really mess up that far. But he did. The weight of that guilt, the weight of that shame, those were crushing to his spirit without a question. Those were crushing to his spirit. Again, I failed God. I failed myself. I am worthless. I am no good. See, Peter's denial of Jesus in his eyes was his greatest failure. I've gone too far. I've really, really blown it this time. How could I possibly recover from that? How could I possibly get this right? That had to be his thoughts. That's where his heart was at that very moment. Peter is broken. His self-loathing, his anger at himself was at levels that we can't even imagine. The idea of forgiveness, oh, really? How's that even possible? I mean, look at what I did. Do you know what I did? Do you have any far how I went? Do you know? Do you understand? How could this be possible? Mark 16, verse 7, we continue to paint the picture to get to where we are today in our message for the day about Peter asking Jesus if he loved him. Mark 16 and verse 7, this is very important. The resurrection has taken place. The angels are telling those at the tomb, Jesus is not here. He is risen, just like he said that he would. Go look. See the place where they laid him. In other words, you'll find out he's gone. He's really, really not here. But then they turn to them. And they're saying, but, in other words, don't wait. It's really happened. He's truly not here. Go tell his disciples and Peter. That's important. Think about where Peter's at this very moment. Go tell his disciples and Peter. The very, very clear mark, he'd separated himself. He had separated himself. He no longer felt worthy. I'm not even worthy to be counted with that group. I'm not even worthy to be seen with them, much less be called a disciple. Then we turn to our passage for today and we see Peter, he's still wrestling with who he is, right? He's still wrestling with what he's done. But Jesus has been back for a little while. Jesus, it tells us this would be the third appearance to the disciples. But this is the first conversation that he and Peter have sat and had together one-on-one. Peter's been avoiding this moment because he's still wrestling with this. He's back in the circle, but from a distance. You ever been in a room but felt lonely? There's 100 people around you, but you feel like you're the only one there. This is where he's at right now. But Jesus calls him over and he says, let's talk. Peter is not only believing that forgiveness is impossible, but completely just it's not even fathomable at this moment. But what he finds in this conversation is that not only forgiveness is possible, but it's relieving. It's a brand new lease on life. And he also finds out that the love of God is not superficial. He finds out that the love of God is not fickle or conditional. Peter sees that Jesus is real. That's what the lesson is that we need to see today. I was with a group of people yesterday, and we were speaking at this deal with a bunch of different speakers and pastors and whatever. And again, I don't want to be critical of anyone, but the moment came for me to speak, and all these people had given all these great theological dissertations and all this different stuff of how do you reach your people, what do you say to your people, this and that, and they came to me, and I could feel the other guys in the room going, oh, God, I know what he's going to say. I said, just be real. That's what Jesus did. Just be real. Talk to people. That's what Jesus did. And so we find out here Jesus is talking to Peter. And this is the lesson that every one of us need today. How many of us have made a blunder in life? I think that's 100%, right? We've all done that, whatever it might be. And again, we're not talking about the levels, and we're not talking about the comparisons. Well, I did this. Well, you don't know what I did. We could get into that conversation, and some of it could be embarrassing. That's not what God knows. Okay? God knows. And I include myself in that conversation. How many of us have ever thought, man, I really did it this time. It's over. There's no way this could be fixed. I am damaged goods. I'm washed up. And if you didn't feel that way, somebody else might have felt that way about you and told you, you're no good. You've done this, you've done that. I heard that conversation when I felt like the Lord called me to the ministry. I was told, you can't do it. You've done this, you've done that. But my Bible says God's forgiven me. Amen? Peter was feeling that self-loathing at that moment. He was really struggling. And so we find them talking. And Jesus asked Peter in this first verse, in verse 15, he said, do you love me more than these? Now that's a powerful question all by itself, right? Because Peter is in a really tough spot at this very moment, because this question is presenting a dilemma to him, because now all of the emotions of his failure are coming back. Oh man. I'm just kind of finding my way back in, and now he's questioning whether I really love him or not. He remembers what I did. So all the emotions are pouring all back in. And so Peter is all in this big dilemma. He's hearing these words of Jesus that he doubts whether I love him. The war inside of him is just fighting. And he's really asking himself now, man, did I really blow it? Did I really mess up? Am I beyond help? Did I really go too far? Do I even have a purpose? Can I actually recover from this? Somebody's hearing this today because somebody's been asking themselves this question. I want you to hear this. And Jesus asked him again, do you love me? Now Peter is absolutely sure this line of question can't possibly be good. He's clearly doubting my sincerity in my answer. He's clearly doubting because Jesus asked these questions and Peter would respond in the affirmative. Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. But we see this line of question continues, and all the while what Peter is missing, and oftentimes in these conversations and even in our conversations that we have with the Lord, we miss the point, because not only is Jesus asking him this question, he's also giving him an assignment. Feed my sheep, shepherd my sheep. But Peter's not hearing that part. All he's hearing is he doubts that I love him. He don't think that I'm real. See, remember when Jesus was talking to the disciples and said, the Son of Man must be given over, and he's going to do this and going to do that, but he'll rise again on the third day. They didn't hear the third day part. Here again, they're shutting out the most important part, is he's bringing you, not just bringing you back into the fold, he's restoring you to a place of importance. He's putting you in a place of help for others, because now you know how to teach. Now you know how to help. But Peter didn't hear that. Jesus is giving the assignment, feed my sheep, shepherd my sheep. These are positions of trust. This is not just a flippant thing. This is position of trust, a position of authority, a position of purpose. But Peter didn't think he had one anymore, because I messed up too much. I've gone too far. Peter only hears doubt. Why? Because he did fail. He failed. And he knew it. And others knew it. They were there when he said no. They were there when he denied it. They were there. There's no way to get around this. You know, there weren't cell phone cameras at that time, but there were ears, and everybody heard it. Yeah, you did say it. You did deny it. He knew it. Others knew it. But even greater, what bothered him the most is he knew Jesus knew it. He knew Jesus knew it, and he's trying to reconcile this. How am I going to fix this? You're not. God is going to offer you the solution by coming to him, letting him have it, letting him wash it away, letting him take care of it. How could after such a failure, one is asking, how could I be forgiven? How could I be forgiven? How could I be loved by the one that I failed? That's what Peter's fighting right here in this story. How could I be loved by the one that I failed? And certainly he would never trust me again. But see, friends, here's what he's missing. And here's what so many miss today. It was because of what Jesus had just done on the cross that such was absolutely possible. It had been taken care of. He says he took it to the cross and he nailed it to the cross and he took care of it. We forget that because we get consumed by our failure. We're not talking about justification of making it right. Oh, I did this, but. No, we're not looking for a but. We did it. Peter's owning this really, really bad. Man, did I ever really blow it. But what he's missing is God saying, I know. But it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Peter is doubting himself terribly. Jesus knew Peter's heart. He knew the passion that he had. He had already told him, upon this rock, upon this faith, this thing that you have stated, that I am the Christ, I am the Son of the living God, I am the Messiah. I'm going to build a church on that. He'd already said these things. He knew Peter's passion. He knew his heart. And because of that, millions upon millions, multitudes of lives through eternity has been changed because of that. We see in verse 17, for the third time, Jesus says, do you love me? And then we read immediately after, Peter was grieved. What does that mean? He's saying to himself, okay, now it's for sure. I'm not very convincing. Yes, I've been answering in the affirmative. Yes, I've been saying, yes, you know that I do. But obviously he can see through me. Obviously, he thinks I don't mean it and I'm not doing a very good job of this. So it's over. It's over. Nothing that I could say, nothing that I could offer is going to change what I have done. It is going to haunt me forever. I can't get this stain off. It's going to be there as a reminder for me forever for what I have done. What we find, friends, in this conversation is the most beautiful picture of restoration. Because, see, it was not excusing a wrong. That's what we see here. This was not excusing a wrong, but rather what Jesus was saying, okay, let's back up. Let's learn from this moment and let's go help somebody else. Let's learn from what we've been through. Let's learn from what we've done and let's go help others that are battling the same thing. That is the whole point of why we do what we do. We're a room of broken people. Now, some will admit it and some won't. Some are in a better place than others. That's okay. We're all on a different journey. But if we can't come together and understand, in those moments is how we find healing. In those moments is how we find restoration. Then we're missing the whole entire reason of why we do this. Because when we get closer to God, we get closer to one another. Why? Because we're to love God and love one another. But I can't love you until I learn how to love God, which allows me to learn how to love me. And once I can do that, then I can love you. Because when I'm self-loathing, when I've done this, I've done that, I can't help you because I'm too locked into me. See, I got to learn to get that guy out of the way. This is what Peter is learning in this incredible conversation. Those that are battling the same problem, now you can go help them, because who understands things better than one who has been there? Nobody. I'm going through a broken home. We're going through a divorce. The person that's been through it, they know. You know, my dad left me when I was 4. Somebody that's been through that, they know. I lost my job. I did this. We could go down the myriad of list of all these different things. I struggled with this addiction or this problem. See, what we need to understand about restoration, what we find in this beautiful picture, we love to restore stuff, don't we? Okay? Maybe people have done that. Maybe people have restored some old furniture or an old car. You know, because we look at that item and we say, well, it was good one time. But now look at it, I mean, it's all broken down and it stopped working and it don't look so good anymore. And that's not about you looking in the mirror every morning. We're not talking about that. But sometimes I feel that way. But we like to restore stuff. We like to bring things back to life. And we can look at, well, it's not as good as it used to be, or it's got some weak areas. But with time and a little care and a little paint and some new parts, they not only look better in some cases than they did when they were first around, but now they can be reintroduced to a whole new audience. I mean, it's pretty cool when you see young people, do they see cars from the 40s or 50s and say, man, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, you know? But they would have just said, well, it's just another car during that era. But now it's like, wow. Or you take an old table or an old cabinet that's all messed up and repolish it and refinish it. And it's like, wow, that's beautiful. And it belonged to someone back 100 years ago. We like to do that. We like to restore those things. Who doesn't want to get excited about that? Everybody likes to see new things come about. What we find here is a broken life being restored. Who doesn't want to cheer for that? Who doesn't want to get excited about that? Here's a life that was crushed, a life that had quit, a life that wasn't functioning anymore. And now, not only does it get to function, it gets to flourish. It gets to be restored. It gets to be introduced to a whole brand new audience. Well, I thought, but wait a minute, something's different. Maybe it's like hearing a testimony from someone that maybe had a not so great reputation, and hearing their heart has been changed. Wow, like God did such an incredible miracle in that person's life. I mean, I can't imagine, because if God can do that for them, what can he do for me? I thought I was gone too far. A dear friend of mine was literally walking down the corridor to the electric chair. True story. He'd been convicted of multiple homicides, and he was headed to the electric chair. During the course of his term in prison, he had come to know the Lord and loved God dearly. And he said, Lord, I know I've done a lot of bad things in this life, but this one thing that I'm going to have my life taken for, you know I didn't do it. You know I didn't do it. But if this is my fate because of the life that I've lived, that's what it'll be. But if you've got something else for me to do, as they're entering into the chamber, head shaved, ankles shaved, chains on, the governor calls. And he says, I hate that guy, but you got to let him go. He didn't do it. I just had evidence come into my desk. That man spent 40 years traveling the world, sharing his testimony about what God had done for him, and radically changed his life. Unbelievable story. And but the most important part of that story, he said, you know how I really got release? It wasn't from prison. It wasn't from the guilt from all the things that I had done or whatever. He said, I didn't get released until I went to the person who did do what I had been accused for and forgave them. That's heavy. That's real. Here we see restoration as such a powerful thing. Maybe somebody here today, or maybe somebody that you know, they need to hear this. They need to hear this message. Peter is hearing Jesus, and he's saying it to everybody today who will listen. Do you love me? Because Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey my commands. What did Jesus command? Just 2 things. Love God, love one another. He didn't make it difficult. We don't have to search and say, oh man, I forgot that page. No, just 2 things. He made it pretty easy. It's not hard. He said, if you love me, you'll do those things. If you love me, because when you love me, he's saying it'll be real. And when it's real, then it just shows. You don't even have to say anything sometimes. When people, your significant person in your life, whoever they are, if they really love you, you know it. And they don't have to tell you every 5 minutes. Sometimes we do that when we're new and young and in love and all that stuff. But as time goes by, they just know. They just know. You just know because it's real. And what we find in this powerful, powerful story is Jesus said, do you love me? And if the answer is yes, it's not about what you've done. It's not about what you've done. It's what I need you to do. That's what Jesus is saying. We're not here to discuss what you've done. I already know that. I already know what you did. And I've already taken care of it. Now it's time to move on. We can't live there. We can't stay there, because if we do, we don't get anywhere new. If we continue to wallow in that, you never get anywhere, and you never get clean. You never become whole. You never are able to be a blessing to anybody else. Jesus is saying, what do I need you to do? Is it going to be easy? No. It is not going to be easy at all, what I'm asking you to do. Are people going to doubt you? Yes. Yes, because you're flawed. You're coming into this at a deficit because they already know you've already denied me before. You didn't live for me before. That's why when Jesus talks about going back to your own place where you grew up to try to be a pastor or whatever, a lot of people will struggle with that because, well, I knew you when you grew up. I knew when you was doing this or doing that, or I knew when you stole your grandma's car, or whatever. He's saying people are going to doubt you. In fact, he said people are going to judge you because that's the world that we live in. That's how people operate. People might not forgive you because you've said this or that. But here's what I want you to understand, Peter. Here's what I want you to understand, anybody that's listening. If just one broken person can find healing through your brokenness, that's your assignment. Somebody needs to hear that today. If just one person can be healed through your brokenness, that's your assignment. And that's what he wanted Peter to understand. I know this has been difficult. You did it. We're not here to argue that one way or the other, but it's time to take that lesson and it's time to move on, because the restoration process now allows me to be introduced to a whole new audience. Yes, maybe it's at the antique shop, and maybe some people would have to, but the person that's looking for that is going to come and be awed by that. Wow, what was old is now new. And what I see now is something that changes lives. Jesus said to Peter, feed my sheep, shepherd my sheep. He not only forgives Peter, but he restores life to Peter. In other words, now you have a purpose. Now you have a purpose. See, friends, the feeling of defeat, and we've all been there at some point in time. Some of us that are older remember the wide world of sports, the agony of defeat. And you see the guy flying off the ski thing and getting all broken up. We've all been defeated at something in this life. We felt, whether it was a contest, maybe it was a big test in class, or maybe it was whatever. It could be all kinds of different things. A relationship, it could be all kinds of stuff that we feel defeated at. The feeling of defeat, the feeling of failure, when it gets replaced, when it gets restored to a place that matters, it changes our outlook. It changes our perspective. It changes our vision. It changes our purpose. See, Peter's brokenness did not disqualify him. We have that struggle in this life. Oh, they did this and they did that. Okay, what did you do? This is not a comparison of apples and oranges. Or everybody done something. Okay, it's not about leading a perfect life. And not everybody's been a mass murderer, thank God. Not everybody's been terrible. Well, okay, but everybody's done something in some kind of way. So it's not a comparison test, which is a very, very easy place to get to. But Peter's brokenness did not disqualify him. It gave him and even greater preparation for the call that had been placed on his life. I'll stand before you today and I'll tell you this from the bottom of my heart. My 13 years on the road as an officer, it prepared me more for what I do right now than any seminary class I ever took. Why? Because it introduced me to reality. Reality like no one could ever know. See, my failures in my life, my doubts, my brokenness at times, today I look at that and I look at those stories and I remember those things and I remember some of the stupid things. I remember this past week I was doing some writing. I'm like, man, you were a real idiot years ago, weren't you? I mean, I was, because I didn't know him. I didn't have the direction that I have now. And I look at those things and I look at those moments and I realize now that is what drives me more than anything, to show everybody it is possible to stay in the game. Because I know what it did for me. And I think sometimes when you can speak from the heart, then you connect. You just find, because that person really means that. To me, there's value in that. And that's why I teach the way that I teach, not because I try to get any kind of anything on me. I want us to see how this becomes real, that we can walk in this, that these stories are not just stories that make up a cool book, but this is about life. This is about healing and restoration. Broken bones, it tells us, are to grow back stronger. I don't know if that's true or not. I know a lot of the ones that I broke, they seem pretty weak these days, but maybe that's just age. I don't know. But it tells us they come back stronger. Broken wills can often and very often do provide moments that change the world. Because I didn't stay where I was. See, Peter didn't stay in his defeat. Peter didn't stay in his brokenness. And because of his testimony in the book of Acts, the church got started. Because of his boldness, because he told this group of people, the very Jesus that you crucified, the very Jesus that you got rid of, he is the answer. And because of his boldness, it says on that day over 3,000 people came to know the Lord. And the church was added to daily by those who would come. In other words, what we find here is something powerful that changes everything. So Jesus lets Peter know it's not going to be easy. I didn't tell you it's going to be easy, and it's going to come at a cost. See, we don't oftentimes think about that. But if you're going to a place, I don't care where it is, Walmart or anywhere, it doesn't matter, there's nothing in that place that you can't have. Not one thing, as long as you can pay for it. Everything's got a sticker on it. Everything's got a cost on it, right? And if you're trying to take it without paying for it, that's got a cost too. It's called restitution in 30 days. But that's a whole different story. But what we find is everything's got a cost. And Jesus makes it clear. Verse 18. He says to him, truly, I tell you. So in other words, he said, I'm not fooling around with you, Peter. I'm letting you know everything. It's total transparency here. He says, truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you would tie your belt and walk wherever you wanted to. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will tie you and carry you where you do not want to go. Younger, in other words, what he's saying is you did what you wanted to. You did, and most of us did in that time. But he's saying as you get older, another will lead you to places you don't want to go. That's the cost. That's what this is going to bring you. I didn't tell you it was going to be easy, but I'm giving you this assignment. Feed my sheep, shepherd my sheep, show them what is real. Verse 19, it clearly says why he told him this. It said he said this to indicate by what kind of death Peter would glorify God. So it's going to cost him his life. That's how this was going to end. Reports say that Peter was crucified, but he refused to be crucified in the normal way because he said he was not worthy of the honor of being crucified like Jesus, and he was crucified upside down. But it says after saying this, he told him, Jesus telling Peter, follow me. So what we find is this makes it clear what was going to happen, what this meant, and it was a foreshadowing of Peter's death. But Jesus concludes, and this is important, this is where we'll start wrapping up the message. Jesus concludes with the two words, follow me. So what was he telling him in that moment? What he was saying is, because of your love for me. And yes, Peter, I know that you do. Yes, I know that it's real. Because of your brokenness. Because, see friends, brokenness reflects the nature of a changed heart. How many of us get that today? If I had no regret, then nothing's changed. If I have no remorse, nothing's changed. There was a guy on death row years ago named Donald Gaskins, and he had been a mass murderer, and he had killed over 200 people over the course of time. He's a very, very vile man. And they said his last words, where they asked him this, do you have any last words? He said, I don't regret one thing that I've done. Wow. That's not a changed heart. That's an evil heart. That's a hard heart. Peter's heart was broken over what he had done. And Jesus said, I know. Your brokenness shows the change. It reflects the changed heart. And the call that I have given you to help others, yes, it comes at a high cost, but the reward is eternal. See, sometimes we battle, man, this is so hard, Pastor. Life is so difficult. Yes, it is. He never said that it wasn't going to be. If it was smooth sailing all the time, you wouldn't need faith. You wouldn't need anything to lean on because, well, I got it all. I don't need anything. Because we look at it from a material way, and I don't need this, I don't need it. But the Lord is saying every now and then, it's like the old song said, if I never had a problem, I wouldn't know God could solve them. Well, that's true, right? I mean, if nothing ever came about, if your car ran all the time and it never had a knock or never had a problem, you never have to get it fixed. Okay? It would last forever. Well, that's not reality because it doesn't. Nothing lasts forever. What we need to understand is we can take the things and the lessons and the moments and the times we've had, and those are lessons that we can help somebody else. Jesus is saying to him, so your faithfulness, the last part of this, your faithfulness to me will show others a better way. Your faithfulness will show others a better way, a newer path, and a better ending. So what he's saying to Peter is, so come on, let's go. We got work to do. Follow me. Man, isn't that great? When we see how this whole picture comes about from one that is crushed and broken by what they did do. And Jesus said, come on, let's go. We got work to do, man. We got time to talk about that. Yeah, you did it. Okay. It's not about justifying it. It's not about making it right. It's about we can do better than that. Because if you follow me, I will show you better than that. Let me close with this. Failure is not final. No matter what you're going through in this life, no matter what you're wrestling with, or maybe your loved one, failure is not final. All of us have been down a road that we regret. Every single one of us. But let me challenge you with this morning as we close. Don't make that a permanent residence. Don't live there. Restoration is more. Restoration is more than a new coat of paint. It's a different assignment to use the new you. Restoration is not a new coat of paint. It's an assignment to use the new you to help create more new all around you. So, Pastor, how do we get there? There's only one way. Jesus said, what? Follow me. That's the answer, friends. I am absolutely convinced of that. As good as I'm standing before you, that is the answer. And Jesus said, follow me. All the way home. All the way home. Friends, he is calling today. My question to you is, will you answer? Amen?